You ever think about how fragile everything is? How one single narrow piece of water could basically hold the entire global economy hostage? Well, what if I told you that overnight the rules that have governed the high seas for centuries could just get thrown out the window? We're going to walk through a scenario set in a hypothetical March of 2026 where that's exactly what happens.
So let's start with this number, 20%. That's how much of the entire world's oil supply has to pass through one tiny choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. It is, and this is no exaggeration, the single most important artery for global energy. And then, in our scenario, just like that, the tap gets turned off. That critical artery gets squeezed shut, Iran takes effective control of the strait, and it goes from being this open international highway to, well, their private toll road. The oil doesn't stop completely, but the era of free navigation, yeah, that's over.
So what happens when the world's most important waterway isn't really open for business anymore? Well, the chaos is immediate, and the ripple effects, they touch every corner of the globe.
Pretty soon, people start calling this a managed Iranian corridor. Now, this isn't a blockade, not in the classic sense. Think of it more like Iran is playing air traffic controller for the ocean. They decide who gets to go and when. Got food for Iran? Come on through. LPG tankers headed to their friends in China? You get fast-tracked. Everyone else? You wait. Or you just turn around.
And the consequences, wow, they spread fast. Within days, you have strikes on key refineries in Kuwait, messing up jet fuel exports. Saudi Arabia has to completely pivot, sending its crude overland to the Red Sea. All of a sudden, shipping traffic around the globe shifts, with a massive surge of ships taking the long, expensive trip around Africa. And it's not just oil either. You know that huge to Africa undersea internet cable? Work on it in the Gulf just stops. This one move hits energy, shipping, and even our digital world.
Now, you'd think the world's response would start with phone calls and diplomacy, right? Nope. It starts with force. The crisis in Hormuz becomes the green light for a long overdue crackdown on the ghost ships of the sea, the Shadow Fleet.
So what is this Shadow Fleet? Basically, it's a massive floating black market. You've got hundreds of old, rusty tankers, many of them barely seaworthy, sailing under fake flags, faking their tracking data, with zero real insurance. And what are they doing? They're moving sanctioned oil for countries like Russia. For years, these guys have been operating in the shadows. Now, they're being hunted out in the open.
And things escalate fast. I mean really fast. On March 20th, boom, French forces seize a Russian tanker in the Med. Just 5 days later, the UK Prime Minister gives the military the go-ahead to board these ships in British waters. We're talking the busy English Channel here. All the allied nations and the Joint Expeditionary Force start sharing intel. The game has totally changed. We've gone from paperwork sanctions to physical force.
And if you want to know the why behind all this quote from the British PM really nails it. The big fear was that all this chaos in Hormuz would make oil prices skyrocket. And who benefits from that? Russia. It would be a massive payday they could use to fund their other conflicts. So this isn't just about maritime safety. It's about cutting off a huge geopolitical money pipeline.
But while all this is going on, navies hunting down rusty tankers, another revolution is kicking into high gear. The massive risk on the high seas is forcing the shipping industry to finally embrace the future. AI is at long last taking the helm. And the reason for this big shift? It all comes down to one absolutely staggering number: 75%. 3/4 of all accidents at sea, they're caused by human error. When a single mistake could spark an international incident, that level of risk just isn't acceptable anymore. The industry needs an AI safety net. And that's exactly what we start to see rolling out. Japan's NYK line, for example, deploys a new car carrier with an AI navigation system that can literally steer the ship to avoid a crash. You have companies like Orca AI teaming up with giants like Anglo-Eastern to put AI-assisted navigation on hundreds of ships. So how's it work? Well, it basically fuses together all the data from the ship's systems, radar, GPS, you name it, to create this real-time risk picture that a human crew just can't match.
It creates this really fascinating contrast, doesn't it? On one hand, you have this gritty, physical conflict, commandos boarding old ships, and on the other, you have this super clean, futuristic race to build a smarter, safer, and one day a fully autonomous global fleet. It's like two different worlds colliding on the very same ocean.
But there's a third layer to all this, a layer that's almost totally invisible. Because underneath the steel ships and the smart computer systems is the one thing that makes it all work: data. And in 2026, there's an invisible war for data happening at sea.
And just look at the numbers. They're wild. Cyber attacks on the Maritime Ministry more than doubled in just 1 year. That's a 103% surge. The physical shooting war in places like Hormuz is being perfectly mirrored by a digital war targeting the entire shipping industry.
And listen, we're not talking about simple hacks anymore. Attackers are using AI to automatically scan for weak spots and then carry out almost the entire attack on its own. We're seeing everything from ransomware that can shut down a whole port to actual state-level electronic warfare, like GPS signals being jammed or even faked around the Straits of Hormuz.
This level of deception means the old way of figuring out who's who on the ocean is completely broken. For years, everyone just relied on a single tracking signal, the AIS, but we now know that signal can be turned off, or worse, faked. The new way, really the only way to operate now, is to pull in everything. You fuse AIS data with satellite pictures, radio signals, and behavioral analysis to build a real, layered picture of who a ship is and what it's doing before it becomes a problem.
So here's the bottom line. Cybersecurity at sea has hit a tipping point. It is no longer some problem for the IT department to solve. With new international regulations being enforced, if your ship can't prove it's cybersecure, it can be denied entry into port. It has literally become your license to sail.
And that leaves us with the one huge question that defines this new era. In a world of ghost fleets hiding in plain sight and powerful nations jamming signals, and AI being used by both the good guys and the bad guys, how do you find the truth? Because in 2026, the most valuable thing on the high seas isn't oil, it's knowing what's real.